Welcome back to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I'm Samuel Timothy.
And I'm Taylor Rowe. Today's episode, we went back to our roots a little bit, start talking about the basics, some of the fundamentals that we see that are commonly overlooked. We often get pretty into the weeds in some of these more advanced topics. And it doesn't matter what size company you are, it's always important to kind of understand the basics of marketing and really, take a step back and look at what are we really trying to accomplish here and how do we make that happen? So we talked about three of the most common mistakes or fundamentals that we see businesses overlook. And to be honest with you, we've all sizes of companies we talk to, all different industries. These, I think, will resonate with a lot of you that are listening. So hopefully you enjoy the episode. And of course, give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about kind of getting back to the basics when it comes to marketing or digital marketing. I know we talk and cover a lot of more advanced strategies and ideas, and sometimes we can get into the weeds on topics. And we get a lot of feedback and talk to companies really every day that sometimes forget to go back to the basics and build the fundamentals of marketing. So we want to talk about that and just kind of explain, like, we all know that, success doesn't happen overnight. And that's, understood across everything that we do in life and in business, of course. And obviously you can't build a brand, the big brands we think of, Amazon, Google, Apple, McDonald's, those type of companies, Nike, those brands weren't built overnight. But as marketers and business leaders, we all aspire to build a brand like that and to build that industry leading, category leading brand. And sometimes I think we forget about the fundamentals. So we want to talk about getting back to the basics and some of the most common mistakes that we see companies making and I guess really overlooking when it comes to their marketing strategy. So Samuel, what's the first issue that you see or first fundamental that you see being overlooked all the time?
Yeah, I would say it has to start with a website because I think today's day and age, right, everything that you're doing from a marketing standpoint has to point to something, which ultimately comes down to your web presence. And that comes down to your website.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I mean, your website is, is your new front door, right? Is what they say. And we do see this a lot. Clients, companies, will reach out to us or we'll talk to them. And, whether they've worked with a marketing agency or they've tried to do it internally, they expect, hey, we have a website. Like, okay, great. Now let's turn on the leads, right? Let's turn on the marketing and start generating some leads. And it's much more than that, right? There's a lot of fundamentals that need to happen within your website. First and foremost, you have to look at, okay, who's going to use our website and how do we get people to them? So if this is your first kind of effort or attempt at marketing, it's likely, and we see this all the time, that you don't have any visibility or any traffic to your website today. So if we're going to look at driving traffic to your website, I mean, there's so many different options: organic search, paid search, social media, email marketing, all those sorts of things. And to your point, you want to make sure that your website is, a very solid foundation, because that's really going to be the hub of majority of your marketing campaigns to drive people back to your website. And so we see this all the time in terms of, those fundamentals. Like we said, people say, hey, we want to drive, our goal is to get 10,000 visitors to the website. And we look at the website and there's, tons of technical issues. There's no, title tags and meta descriptions. There's very thin content, meaning we're not going very deep into any of these topics. It's not optimized for conversion. So the clients or customers, if we do get them to the website, they're not going to be able to easily find the information they're looking for or, identify what that next step is to take in terms of conversion. So there's a lot of work. I mean, that might be, 4, 5, 6 months worth of work just to get the website in a place that if we were able to drive traffic to, that we'd be, happy and proud to, drive that traffic, right? Again, your website is your new front door or your website is your new showroom, whatever way you want to look at it. If you think about it, if you had a physical retail location, you would probably, sweep the floors and clean it up and make sure your products look nice and, had a good experience before you, put up the sign on the front, right? And obviously we know that with marketing, digital marketing, it's a lot more than just putting a, open sign on the front to get people to your website. So I agree with you in terms of some technical aspects and things that need to happen on the website that are always really seemingly always overlooked, when clients are looking for, companies are looking for leads or customers.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to the organization internally, right? So sometimes it's probably more an organization where they take creative and aesthetics as a priority over marketing and promotion, right? So they invest a lot heavily into maybe even creating a beautiful website, but then
Sure.
it's not structured in a way that can actually grow with more content, or like you mentioned, or have thought through how people might even convert, or even it doesn't do a good job in terms of communicating the core offerings of a company, and they're trying to be cute, right? So the call to actions are missing because we're like, oh, we don't want to be like everybody else. But the one thing you need to keep in mind is that you don't want to be introducing a completely new navigational structure for your site where someone comes to your site, they can't even figure out how to get around the site or go find how to convert off of a site, right? Because you don't want to be, the prospect shouldn't have to waste their time trying to figure out where do I find the right information, or how do I fill out a form, or how do I get in touch with somebody. So I think, going crazy about just the aesthetics and really forgetting why do we even have a website in the first place, and the fundamentals of, having the right content, having the proper navigational structure, the call to actions, and really positioning the site to be attracting and being more relevant to the persona that we're trying to get in front of.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I see both sides of that too, right? It's not just, hey, we're focused so much on the, aesthetics, not on the content, or not on the user experience, or not on how people are going to get there. I've seen companies go through multiple iterations of the website because they start to recognize that, but still don't understand the bigger picture of, we're looking to get a return on our investment. So let's invest into digital marketing. And they understand that, yes, the first step is this website, but we end up redoing the website 3 or 4 times before we even start promoting it. Because like you said, the first time, oh, we didn't think of this. Oh, we didn't think of that. We built it on a CMS or a platform that wasn't easily editable. So now, the one developer we had left the company, and now our marketing team can't make these changes. Or, we, like you said, we went very, very creative and abstract with our design and our messaging, and it doesn't, speak to search engines, or it's not being indexed. And so I've seen companies do that. And like I said, now they're, $30,000 a piece, and we're getting, we did 3-4 websites, and now we're 100, grand into this project. And then we look and say, well, we didn't get any return on investment. But that's just that's just the ante, right? That's just the money you have to put in to play the game, is to build that website. And that's the first step. And so I think that's a great lesson for companies to learn. What would you say is the second, item or second area that companies tend to overlook?
I would say the second one definitely has to be social, because I think the whole concept of social is not foreign to anybody anymore, but I think the way they go about it is probably not the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, again, everyone, like you just said, everyone understands the power of social, or they've seen the power of social, right? They've, through anecdotal, evidence, they've, bought something on Amazon because they saw an ad on Facebook, or they've, seen or joined in a conversation on LinkedIn that led them to talk to a sales rep and buy a technology. Like you see the advantage, or you see the reach, and you see other companies succeeding. And then I think there's a mental shift of, because it's digital, and because you can run ads, because you can pay for things, because you can reach your audience tomorrow, right? Like we can create a list of who our ideal customers are, and we can run an ad, and we can reach our customers tomorrow, because we've never seen anything like that. If you go back to like traditional, like even commercials that people would run, like, the demographics of who's watching that channel, but it's not as specific as it is on social, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, right? So because you have that ability, people then, I think, take that leap and assume like we can buy this. We can throw money at this problem, and we can basically buy a brand. And we know you can't buy brand awareness. You can't buy brand affinity. True brand affinity can't be purchased, right? So I think when we talk about the fundamentals, if you say, hey, we want to leverage, LinkedIn, right? Well, are we putting in the groundwork, right? Like we just talked about, success doesn't happen overnight. Like we have to build an audience. We have to build a following. Well, how do we build a following, right? If I'm trying to build my personal following or company following on LinkedIn, I need to be active in my community. I need to be providing thought leadership style content that makes people think, that's engaging. I need to be interacting with other thought leaders, other industry leaders, and commenting on their posts. I need to be active in groups. I mean, social media is, look at what it is, right? It's a platform for us to communicate with our peers and share experiences, share information. And so if you want to build a following, it's no different than If it was a personal relationship, like you have to provide value, you have to be active, you have to give effort. And the companies that understand that are winning social media, because once you build that following, the reach is incredible. But if you just go into it and think, okay, I'm gonna pay for this, right? I don't want to put in the work. I'm just gonna pay for it. I'm gonna focus all on ads. It's not that ads can't be effective, but there's a compounding effect of that as well. And you have to put in the work and test all those different variables we've talked about in the past. The targeting, the messaging, the experience, your credibility and brand awareness. Again, if the first time they've seen you or heard of you is because of this ad, it's much less likely that they're going to trust you and convert or whatever that is. So I think social media is really just like every platform is something that people assume that that's overnight success, and they don't see the work that goes in for years and years. And if you're measuring it like you would a Google Ads campaign, you probably cancel. You probably stop after 3 or 4 posts, right? If someone said, "Hey, you got to post on LinkedIn, twice a day for 6 months," it's not a linear path. Like you might not get anything for the first 3 months, right? You might not get anything for the first year, but eventually you'll build enough awareness that your audience, when they have a question about that service, that industry, they're going to come to you. And that's really what you want to be, is that go-to person in your industry. So to me, that's something you can't buy. And again, the fundamentals of just hard work is overlooked, because we look at it as digital. Therefore, it's not tangible. It should be easy. It should be something you can automate, and it's just not. That's just not how it works.
Yeah, nothing in life is a quick fix or a shortcut, right? And I think, like you said, you don't become a thought leader by outsourcing everything, right? You cannot. You have to take the time, and if you have to lead with your own thoughts, and then that's how you become a thought leader. So I think the fact of the matter is, if you're actually trying to leverage social media as a means to position your company and you as a leader to be an industry leader, and also to command attention, right, and also to get recognition in the marketplace, then it's going to require time and effort, and that means in the form of content. And it's not just creating content; it also comes down to is it really adding value, right? You don't want to be all salesy, but if you don't add value to people, people won't find value in following you. And then last but not least, like you said, the consistency is a super critical part of it. I think a lot of people give up because they were expecting to be famous and they were expecting for that one post to go viral. But that just doesn't happen. And it also kind of depends on the industry as well, right? Not everything in every industry is going to be always viral, right? It is going to require, a certain type of stamina and commitment to continue to put out quality content, even when it doesn't seem like it's resonating with anybody.
Yeah. Especially when it doesn't seem, because it's never going to. I mean, anybody that's ever, you're the first 1,000 times, like nothing might ever happen, right? But it's that compounding effect over time. And you made a great point about the content itself. I mean, again, go back to the website example. We talk about social media now. I'm assuming this is kind of going to be a common thread in our conversation, is like that quality piece that you're looking for, that positioning yourself as a thought leader. Like if you have that industry expertise, like that has to come from you, because if you could outsource that, then everyone would do it, right? If it was easy, everyone would do it. So if someone else possesses that knowledge and is able to create that following for you, they would do it for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. That's true. And I think it goes back to an episode I think we've done a couple of months, maybe a couple of episodes back, where we were talking about kind of the attribution, and some of those things that we're talking about may not have a direct impact on your business right there and then, but your message, your post, it's going to get around, and people are going to hear a podcast or something, right? And you probably are building a little bit of recognition in the marketplace, but you may not be able to pinpoint it. But unless you have consistency, the word isn't going to just spread naturally. And you can't buy your way.
And it's not the same for everyone, right? I mean, we create video, you create podcasts, you create social posts, you create whatever content on the website, blog posts, infographics, all of these things that, maybe your intention was that those were going to be the first interaction with somebody. Then they're going to come to your website, or then they're going to go to Google and search and then see your ad. Could be the opposite, right? You could meet someone at a trade show, or they could go to Google and search and come to your website, or they find you on a directory and come to your website. Then they discover this content, right? So you may have invested into a video 6 months ago that nobody saw, but now you have a prospect in the funnel that's been talking to a sales rep, and then they watch that video, and it's much more impactful at that point because it spoke directly to the point of, where they're at in that process or their decision-making process. So you just don't know. And I think that's a great point about, like, if you just trust and follow the same standards of measurement for success for all of those, you'll probably give up a lot sooner. And I think this is where a lot of marketers are in tough positions because, realistically, they're trying to keep their job, right? And so if they're getting leads because they're running ads on, Facebook or LinkedIn, the lead ads, and they're running Google ads, and they're, spending too much money on branded search, but it's actually driving leads, right? And they can go back and say, hey, we spent X amount of dollars. We got so many leads in the pipeline. They can keep their job, right? But if they say, hey, I want to reallocate all this budget and I'm going to post 10 times a day on LinkedIn, or, I'm going to spend, 4 hours a day on LinkedIn, and you do that for 3 months and nothing happens, like they're in the hot seat, right? They're going to start sweating and say, okay, well, maybe this isn't working. Like, I'm not willing to risk my job on this. And so I think you have to have internal buy-in. We talk about this, ad nauseum, but I do believe that holds a lot of companies back, is like the status quo is easy and you can show, data and results in the short term. And you're ultimately going to be sacrificing long-term results for the company. But if leadership doesn't understand that, then no one's going to stick their neck out and risk their job for it.
Most certainly. Yeah. And I think, all of the common theme we're seeing is also just anything that we're talking about, right? Building a website, you cannot just overnight perfect it, right? It is an iterating process. And I think businesses and brands need to recognize it and say, hey, perfection is the enemy of good. Get it live and continue to iterate and improve and continue to work at it, right? It is a integral part of the entire marketing ecosystem. And then the same thing with social media. Hey, we have to continue to invest time and resource into it. May not be able to pinpoint exactly where a social media post generated a specific lead or a revenue in the pipeline, but it actually is helping the brand grow its recognition in the marketplace and building authority, right, in the marketplace. And that ultimately is going to have a big impact on the company as a whole. And your competitor who's going to try to shortcut it by just buying ads, it's going to be short-lived.
Right. And really, if you are what we're talking about, right, like there is no shortcut to success. I think if you're really committed to accelerating or, building a shortcut, to me, that secret ingredient is what you just said, is speed, right? If you wait, if your plan and strategy is, we're going to take 3 months to put together an ebook and then we're going to do this and that. And and the alternative is what we kind of just talked about, is like getting active in social media and sending out emails and connecting with people, and, you're running ads and testing. And just like, if you're not worried about those short-term metrics and your ultimate goal is just find the right equation and right cadence and right sequence and all these kind of things, that speed is compounding, right? Those, like we just talked about, those 50 interactions a day on LinkedIn or whatever, multiplied by 50 days versus, it took me 50 days to get one ebook out, and then now no one's seen this ebook. That compounded over 5 years. That's a completely different position that you can be in. So it's still not overnight, but that's the best way to do it is, if you're talking about the foundations, we've never done marketing before, let's get after it, right? And let's start being as active as we can, which is, it means that there's an investment to be made and that you have to allocate resources to do it. But I also think you have to kind of put blinders on for the first, year at least, and not worry about the metrics.
Most certainly. So we talked about, two fundamentals of the things that we need to think about as marketers. Is going back to the basics. I would say, Taylor, the third one, most people kind of try to, fix by just trying to say, hey, can we fix this marketing problem by just buying some technology? So I would say the third issue is the technology and how people misunderstand how the technology fit into the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a great one. We see it all the time. The first thing that, companies do is invest into, an ABM technology or marketing automation technology, or, a CRM even. It's like, those are very basic things that if we've been in business for an extended period of time, like we don't have that. We don't have those pieces of tech in place. Like, yes, I agree that we need that, but that's just, maybe, right? It depends on your strategy. Do we need an ABM technology from day one? No. Do we need a CRM? Probably would be a good idea. So I think you got to start with some of the basics and fundamentals of the tech, but also just understand what tech is. Tech is not the answer. Tech should not drive your marketing strategy. You shouldn't build your marketing strategy around what reports, come out of the box in, HubSpot or Marketo or Pardot or whatever. You should build your marketing strategy around your customer and leverage technology where it can help you be more efficient so that you can get that speed that we just talked about. But we do see a lot, companies waiting, and then now the pipeline is empty. It's just like it is today. It's the end of Q3, moving into Q4. We're 50% behind our growth goals this year, so we really need to ramp things up. Let's go buy this piece of technology and expect that to be the Hail Mary that wins the game. And it's just not. It is what it is, right? Technology is a platform. It's a tool, and if you don't use the tool, then it's not going to be effective. And if you don't have the right strategy around it, you can have the best, most expensive tech stack in the world, but if you don't have the right marketing brains behind it, it's not going to be effective.
Yeah, I mean, I think recognizing for what it is, right? Like you said, it's a tool and it's extremely powerful if you do it correctly. But if you don't have some of the fundamentals that we just talked about, you don't have a fully functioning website with a quality visitors coming to it, and you have people that are converting off of the website, and you don't have a social platform or any sort of traffic attracting platform to get people to recognize your brand and actually come and consume the content you're putting out, or even converting into an inquiry, the technology really plays no part in whatsoever. So if you're actually in the early stage, right, trying to get the fundamentals in place, and sometimes the technology is probably premature to do. And I remember a story of Tesla, I think when Elon Musk was trying to do a fully automated production line, and he was actually trying to eliminate any sort of human intervention in whatsoever in production. And he was successful in implementing a lot of robots and trying to make the entire Tesla model, whatever, coming off the production line using just robots. But I think what they ran into was there were a lot of inefficiencies they ran into. There were a lot of errors, and I'm still hearing Tesla owners saying their door panels don't match with each other, and there's they hear outside noise, road noise when they drive, because obviously they were trying to speed up production before they actually perfected the actual production line, right? So I think people try to do automation and quick using tools to try to figure out how do we solve this marketing problem that we have with some technology.
The idea of kind of quick wins, right? I mean, again, the problem is that it works for some people, and so then we expect it to work for everyone. And again, to reiterate, we're talking about companies that are just getting started with their marketing, or they've been doing some things, but just not very effectively. Mm-hmm. And so we do see this a lot. And I think one thing to also keep in mind is I don't want to say the negative impact, but yeah, the hole that you can dig yourself by not marketing, right? Is I think that gap between you and your competition is a lot of times people forget about that. And again, it's we've been in business for 25 years or 30 years or 100 years. It doesn't matter. We hear this story all the time. We've never done any marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So we now are 20 years behind our competition, right? I mean, if we look at it that way, and we say, okay, let's get some quick wins, where there's a great quote. I don't know who said it, but it's something to the effect of don't walk 10 miles into the woods and expect to get out in 5. Mm-hmm. You can't dig yourself that hole. And then we haven't marketed for 20 years. So I'll give you 2 months to get me, some customers, right? There's a lot of things that have probably been overlooked and that we have to undo for the last 20 years. Plus now this gap. I mean, most channels that you're talking about, if we're talking about anything organic search, organic social, we have to overcome the brand affinity and brand awareness that our competitors have built against us in those last 20 years. So it's not that we're here to discourage anybody or to say hey, it's not possible. We just want to look at it realistically and say, hey, if we are going to do this, again, let's put a timeline in place of we're going to focus on getting us back to ground zero over the first 6 months or 8 months or 12 months. I mean, it might take 2 years. I mean, there's obviously, again, there are some things that can drive short term, but you can't expect to go up against the category leaders in your industry if they've been aggressively marketing and doing a great job for 4 or 5 years and you're just starting today. There is a gap there. We have to at least acknowledge that gap and then look at what we can do to overcome it.
Well, certainly. And I think the last thing that I would just add is just the budget and timing, right? All of this, what we're describing, right? It all is going to take time. And also, you can't build a brand overnight and you can't build a brand on a small budget, right? So people just need to have some realistic expectation of how much time is it going to be required to really build a strong brand, and also the amount of resources, whether it's in the form of money or in the form of human capital, that's going to be required to build that.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully this was informational for you and valuable for you. If you enjoyed the episode, give us a like, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to podcasts, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and tune in next week for another episode.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by One IMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, one web, one IMS.